We're live. Hey everybody, it is a beautiful Saturday morning. I hope everyone's having a great Saturday. I'm here with my beautiful daughter, Abby, this morning, and she's joined me for a couple minutes. We're going to talk about something I think is really important. I read a staggering statistic recently that showed how people are spending their money now, particularly millennials. They're spending so much money on student debt and things like that, but the problem is they haven't really figured out how to manage money. And so now Abby has officially entered the workforce. She's 12 years old now, and she's doing a lot of babysitting and things like that. And she started to ask some questions about how to save money and invest money, which got me really excited. And so I invited her to read the very first business book I ever read, which my grandfather gave to me. He gave me this book when I was 14 years old called The Richest Man in Babylon. So Abby just recently read this book, The Richest Man in Babylon. If you haven't read it, it's a great read. It's a simple story type read. But I asked her to join me today, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the lessons that she learned while reading the book, Richest Man in Babylon. So what do you want to tell the world, Abby?
Hi. I think that this book, I was a little bit timid just because it was, my first business book, and, it was just kind of, a whole different world that I was stepping into, but I was actually really surprised and pleased with how it turned out. It's written in sort of, biblical terms, which kind of made it confusing, but after going back and reading it, after, dissecting it, it really had so many, life lessons tied into, the stories that it has in it. And it was a really fun to read too, and I'm definitely going to put some of these ideas and things into how I use and spend my money now.
So what are one or two biggest lessons you learned?
I loved that in one of the chapters, since it's a different story each chapter, there was one I was talking about how a person in Babylon had a very almost a regimen sort of how he spent his money, for every 10 of their gold pieces or whatever, he knew exactly what to do. 2 went to paying off debts, 7 for living on, and then 1 for just setting aside.
Awesome.
And I thought that was really cool, so I want to come up with a way that for every 100% of what I earn, what percent of it goes towards each specific thing.
Yeah.
And then my other biggest lesson is in one of the last chapters, and it just talks about a man who was sold into slavery and how another slave told him that he would make it back to being a free man if he just made work his best friend, gave everything his all.
Yeah,
so
awesome.
That was another one of my biggest lessons that I learned.
Yeah, I love both those lessons. I mean, the first thing you talked about was getting systematic in how you save your money, which you and I have talked a lot about. And money can either go to work for you and bring back some of its friends, or it can go to buy things, which is good. It's good to buy things because we need things. Or the third thing money can do is it can flee, it can run away. And if we make bad investments, we'll never see that money again. So Abby and I were talking a little bit. One of the things we dug up, which is really interesting, this is, as you can see, my handwriting when I was 12 years old. So this is out of my ledger when I was 12 years old, me keeping track of where I was working, how many hours I was working, what job site I was on, and here I am at 12 years old, I'm putting in 9, 10, 12-hour days out working either on a construction site or taking care of a construction building. But on the back side of it, I found it really interesting. It shows the amount of money I was saving and depositing in the bank. And I thought it was really fun to look back at this one just to bring back memories of the different job sites and stuff I was on. But I loved that I had already started learning the principle of tracking my money at a young age. And here I am at 12 years old. I have $564 in the bank that I had set aside at that age and started to accumulate that money. I wish I could say I was really good at these principles at a younger age, but I didn't get really on target with them, even though I read this book at 14 until I was about 21. And got really regimented with how I set money aside, how I saved it, how we spend it. And it's funny, Abby and I started talking, and I built a little spreadsheet for her just to give her an example of the power of these principles, that if she can commit to setting aside $20 a week which is a lot. That's a big chunk of what you earn right now. So we might start a little bit smaller. But if she can set aside any portion, well, for this example, $20 a week, starting now at 12 years old, and then as she gets married in 10, 12 years, maybe 30 years, however long until you get married.
That's expensive.
Whenever she decides to get married, if her husband commits to putting aside $20 a week as well, if they make an average of 12% interest in 40 years, that's almost $2 million. At 15% interest, that's $4 million by just setting aside $20 a week and creating that habit now, saying, you know, I'm going to put this aside, I'm going to pay myself first, and then spend the rest on fun things like swig and shopping, clothes at the mall, the things you like to do. So one of the things that Abby and I have talked about, and my commitment to her, which I'm really excited about, is to help her get excited about setting up this principle. For every dollar that you set aside to invest this year, what have I committed to do?
You're going to match it.
I'm going to match
generously.
it. Dollar for dollar. So this year, every dollar she sets aside to invest this year, I'm going to match it with her, and we're going to do some investing together. One of the things that Abby said that was super exciting for me when we started having this conversation is I could see the little wheels in her brain turning. And she came, I can't remember where I was, but you came back to me and said, Dad, I got this great idea. Because we were coming out of winter, spring was coming up, not this week with the weather, but she comes in and says, hey, Dad, I got this great idea. You know, winter is coming to a close, and probably all the companies that are selling winter clothes are going to slow down sales, and we could probably go in and buy the stocks in those companies for really cheap through the summer months, and then next winter, you know, everyone's going to have to buy winter clothes again, and the stock's going to go back up, which I just love that her little brain was putting those pieces together and thinking that way. And we're going to start taking this money that she's accumulated aside, and then I'm matching with her, and we're going to put that money to work.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. So anyway, if you guys have not read this book, Richest Man of Babylon, I would highly recommend it. But most of all for you guys, please start having conversations with your kids about money at a young age. I really want to stop this epidemic going on in the world of seeing people create these habits at a young age of how to spend money. They're spending money faster than they're earning it. And this is going to cause big problems for our country if we don't start having these conversations with our kids and getting them spending money appropriately and saving money for their future. So big shout out to my Papa Lou, who gave me this book when I was 14. He was a great man and a great example of how to save money. And I hope we can all be example to the younger generation now on how to do that. So thanks everyone, have a great Saturday, and we'll see you guys out on the streets.